a quick God's Summer Dream through New Hope that was happening this last week. A couple months ago, we started this idea of together answering prayers, motorbikes for Jesus. So I went to Thailand, was there just for a couple days, and on the plane for a couple of days, but it was so worth it. On Thursday, we were able to give gifts of $1,500, and the men were just speechless. Again, our Hmong friends, they're not known as an emotive kind of group, and so they were just truly stunned. So, they'll take those envelopes back with the cash that was in them. And I carried, you didn't know this beforehand because I wasn't telling anybody in case I would get robbed. I had $5,000 of cash, $5,100 bills on me during that trip. I was a little bit nervous. I've never done anything like that before, and they'd sent some other money over, wired it over. I don't know why we didn't wire over the rest, but anyway, that's beside the point in that. So the men are going to go back, buy motorbikes, and go and tell more people about Jesus. Last year, those men, especially those that are in Laos and in Vietnam, baptized over 50 people in their ministries, and that's more than we do in a year here at New Hope. So next week, the Reverend Dr. Fungchitu Lo, who's produced a couple of videos for us, will be producing a thank you video to New Hope, and we'll show that next week. During that Wednesday time and that Thursday time that we had together, we also did some teaching. Again, sat around tables, opened up Bibles. I opened up the English Bible. They opened up their Thai Bible, their Hmong Bible, their Laotian Bible, their Vietnamese Bible on their smartphones, paper version. And so one quick brief example of teaching is just this whole idea of following Jesus, following together, following long. And I've just gotten to know some of these Hmong men within the last year or two, but this whole idea that we're following Jesus together. When we teach the Bible, they're so attentive. They're so engaged. They take notes. It's just amazing. Then we have they ask great questions, and we talk back and forth, and just in following Jesus, following together. So even though we're so many thousands of miles apart, we're following together the same Jesus. We want to be following along. Many of them have been following along. I've told you some of the stories from the early 2000s where they were, especially the men in Vietnam, were persecuted for this name of Jesus. It did something to my heart. I hope it will continue to do something to your heart. And so there was many other teachings, but don't have time for that this morning. So this morning, God has a summer dream for us. God has a summer dream for us. So as we're here, we all have dreams. We all have dreams. But what we need to think about as we move through this message series are our dreams just me dreams, or are they God dreams? We live in a culture that it teaches us just to have a lot of me dreams. A lot of me dreams. Again, as our high schoolers graduate from high school, what are you going to do next? They have dreams. As they graduate from college, what are you going to do next? As couples get married, what are you going to do? So we got lots of me dreams. Oftentimes when it comes to some of the things that we want for our me dreams, man, we can focus and we can have clarity and we can go after those me dreams without even a drop of the hat. We oftentimes don't think about anything else except that dream. Maybe it's a boat. Maybe it's a vacation. Maybe it's a bigger house. Maybe it's a house up north. Maybe it's just all these me dreams. So we are asking this question: do you see God's summer dreams? Do you see God's summer dream for you? Or again, do you just see me dreams? So there's going to be a tension here. We're going to see if we can switch from just me dreams to some God dreams. And what we want to do as we move through this series is, can we see God's dream? It's not invisible. It's not something that he hides from us. Can we see God's dream? God's dreams always come true for good. Some of us have me dreams that we thought were going to be really, really good, and they came true. And it ended up not being as good as we hoped and thought. So souls following Jesus is God's good summer dream. So our fourth graders in our school here, they had an assignment and a project, and they displayed it on the walls. And as I was preparing for this series a few weeks ago, I happened to go across and I noticed, and so I started reading these dreams. And so the assignment was, my big dream is, and there was a blank, my big dream is, and then I can make my dream come true by. And so our New Hope Christian School fourth graders, my big dream is, these are awesome, aren't they? To be a teacher, to own my own art store, to be on American Idol, kind of a me dream, to be an NBA superstar. I had that me dream many, many years ago, and I found out that I couldn't jump, and I was really, really slow and couldn't really shoot the basketball all that good. So that dream kind of shattered quite a bit. We were talking about that last week. I love this, to help the elderly at the nursing home, to climb the Andes Mountains, or go to Chad, Africa. But my favorite one was this next one. My big dream is to have a snake. And then, as I said, they're part of their assignment. I can make my dream come true by, and here's what the guy with the snake says, praying for a snake and convincing my parents with a slideshow. So again, we're into how to follow God's summer dream, week 2. And I want us to think about this morning is how God longs to move us to his summer dream for us. It's a dream that is flowing with beauty and goodness and truth. And it won't disappoint. God's summer dream for us. Again, as I said, we all have some me dreams. We just do. And in some ways, there's not everything is wrong about having some me dreams. But God has bigger dreams and better dreams for us. They're expanding dreams, as we were thinking about last week. So God longs to move us from little me dreams to God's eternal summer dreams. We know we don't live in an eternal summer right now. But the Bible teaches us and pictures for us and over and over again wants us to know that God has an eternal summer dream for us. We can live in it right now, even though we're going to have fall and winter and spring and summer and fall and winter and spring and summer, and bad things are going to happen, but God has an eternal summer dream for us. So we want to keep singing God's bigger and better summer dreams into us. So you're going to notice during this message series of how to follow God's summer dreams, we're going to sing this song, You Are Greater, every week. The song that was written by Stephen D. by inspiration of our wonderful God many years ago. Is you just want to sing that in, that you are greater, you are greater. And then this newer song to bigger than I thought. You're bigger than I will rest in the Father's hands, leave the rest in the Father's hands. It's a part of this summer dream. Again, part of my trip, because, got these hours and stuff to do all sorts of things and that. And so one of the things that I was doing on this trip was listening to this new Hillsong United album called People. And Pastor Chris referenced it a couple of weeks ago, this Ready or Not song that came out. And again, I've been listening to it kind of on repeat. But I was also listening to the whole album. There's some wonderful songs on this Hillsong. The first song that we sang, So I, that's a Hillsong United inspired song. And they just have a gift of putting music and breath and lyrics and words together. And so the song that really captured my attention is called As You Find Me. Again, on Spotify, on iTunes, on Amazon Music Unlimited, I don't know, on YouTube. You can find all of these songs, whatever you might want to go to. But as you find me, here's just a few of the lyrics that begin to sing into us. I want God to sing into me. It says this: somehow you love me as you find me. You love me as you find me. Your love's too good to leave me here. God wants to have a summer dream written in us. There's a bridge that says, if you want my heart, I won't second guess. Because I need your love more than anything. I'm in, the song says. I'm yours. Your love's too good to leave me here. Your love's too good to leave me. I love that thought. Because that's who the God is that I've been experiencing. It's the God you can experience too. He loves you right where you are, right where you find you, right now, this moment. But he loves you too much to just leave you there. Oftentimes with me dreams. We all come by me dreams pretty honestly. Because all the people around us, many of the movies, many of the songs on popular radio, many of the country western songs, many of the rap and hip-hop songs, many of the videos that people watch on YouTube. It's a lot about me. But God loves us too much to just try to leave us with me dreams. God has a summer dream for each one of us in this room. So this morning, we're going to look at this God's love, God's summer dream for Joseph, and God's love, God's summer dream through Joseph. But we know that long before we get to the fulfillment of the dream God gave Joseph when he was 17, he goes through what we can't imagine. In our culture, in our society, if we were to have the experiences that Joseph has, we would probably just say, I'm done with God. He didn't care about me at all. But somehow Joseph, through 22 years, as we were looking at last week, through 22 years, he remembers. We'll be looking at that next week. He remembers. What does he remember? We'll look at that next week. This morning, I want us to read through Genesis chapter 37 and just see where it takes us. So it opens up with these words. Jacob lived in the land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. This is the account of Jacob. Joseph, a young man of 17, so again we're given that marker, he's 17, was tending flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah, the sons of Zilpah, and those are his father's wives, again 2 of the 4, the maidservants of Rachel and Leah. And he brought their father a bad report about them. Again, these are older brothers. Got 10 older brothers. We're looking at their ages. From Joseph 17, the oldest brother is probably 30, and then all the way between 17 and 30. Some of these men were married. They probably had children. Joseph's dream, as we're going to read it, doesn't threaten their livelihood. But here's what we read. Now, Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made him a richly ornamented robe for him. The other brothers don't get that. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him. And again, the author is going to be so, as he writes this, he's going to be, he's going to craft this idea that we're going to hear that over and over again to drive where the story is going. And they could not speak a kind word to him. Then it says that Joseph had a dream. Again, last week we said he had a dream. God doesn't tell him to share it, but he has a dream, and so he can't keep it to himself. Because it kind of starts as a me dream. We're going to see why it would seem like a me dream. And when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. Again, he hated him all the more. He said to them, listen to this dream I had. We're binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. He's telling this to his 10 older brothers. And his brothers said to him, do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us? And they hated him all the more because of his dream and and what he had said. So it kind of starts with this me dream. And then it says he had another dream, and he told this also to his brothers. Listen, he said to them, I had another dream. And this dream, and this time the sun and the moon and all the 11 stars, he's got a younger brother, were bowing down to me. So mom and dad and 10 older brothers and my younger brother, they're all going to bow down to me. And when he told his father, as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, what is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you? His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. He'll remember. Now his brothers had gone to graze their father's flocks near Shechem, and Israel said to Joseph, as you know, your brothers are grazing the flocks near Shechem. Come, I'm going to send you to them. Very well, he replied. So he said to him, go and see if all is well with your brothers and with the flocks, and bring word back to me. Then he sent him off from the valley of Hebron. When Joseph arrived at Shechem, a man found him wandering around in the fields and asked him, what are you looking for? He replied, I'm looking for my brothers. Can you tell me where they are grazing their flocks? They've moved on from here, the man answered. I heard them say, let's go to Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them near Dothan. But they saw him in the distance. Before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. How much do you have to hate to want to kill somebody? How much do you have to hate to kill your younger half-brother? Here comes that dreamer, they said to each other. Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams. But Reuben, who's the oldest, again, probably 30 years old, wife, children, he tried to rescue him from their hands. Let's not take his life, he said. Don't shed any blood. Throw him into this cistern here in the desert, but don't lay a hand on him. Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take him back to his father. As much as he probably hated him too, we just shouldn't kill our younger brother. And we know how Dad really has his heart attached to Joseph. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the richly ornamented robe he was wearing. We'll see how much Dad can protect you now. They took him and threw him into the cistern. Now the cistern was empty. There was no water in it. As they sat down to eat their meal, they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels were loaded with spices, balm, and myrrh, and they were on their way to take them down to Egypt. It's like we see semi-trucks going back and forth all across our country, taking goods from one spot to another spot. So it's always happened that way. This is just commerce. This is economics 101. So they're going to take these goods down to Egypt to sell them and go back home to produce more goods and to sell them again. Then Judah, and he's the third youngest brother, and from Judah will come Jesus, and there's lots of intrigue. We don't have time for that. But Judah said to his brothers, what will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood. And his brothers agreed. So when the Midianite merchants came by, his brothers pulled Joseph up out of the cistern and sold him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites who took him to Egypt. Again, as I try to think about this story over and over again, obviously Joseph, he's protesting, but more than likely they have a language barrier. They just know the brothers are communicating, hey, we want to sell this person into to be a hired slave, a hired servant in that. What will you give us so you can take him down to Egypt, and then you can get your money back, probably with interest, probably double it, triple it, maybe quadruple it. And then we read when Reuben returned to the cistern to rescue Joseph and saw that Joseph was not there, he tore his clothes. He went back to his brothers and said, the boy isn't there. Where can I turn now? And so they got Joseph's robe. Again, all 10 of them, they're on this plot, slaughtered a goat and dipped the robe in blood, probably shredded it up a little bit. They took the ornamented robe back to their father and said, we found this, examined to see whether it is your son's robe, and recognized it and said, It's my son's robe. Some ferocious animals. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces. And I don't think they knew the impact this would have. Jacob tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and mourned for his son many days. And all of his sons, all 11 of them, and there's some daughters, we mentioned Dinah last week, came to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. No, he said, in mourning, I will go down to the grave to my son. And so his father wept for him. And there's a little turn of the story. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard. So again, next week, more of the story as we read through these chapters and at the end of the book of Genesis. But what we're going to see next week is it's going to go from bad to more bad and then more bad. Next week, I'm going to share a memory from junior high roller skating memories, and one of the songs that was always sung there that had to do with a dream. What we're going to also be looking at next week is how Joseph remembers through those 22 years, but remembers what? Remembers what? And so next week, how to follow God's summer dream, part 3. So as we wrap up this message, I want us to just see how God's summer dream is always flowing with beauty and goodness and truth. Again, some of you will remember we went through this book called The Magnificent Story by James Bryan Smith. If you've never heard of that book and you want some summer reading in that, The Magnificent Story by James Bryan Smith, I can't get those three concepts out of my mind. This beauty, this goodness, and truth. God has that for us. But what we see in Joseph's brothers is the exact opposite of that. What we see in Joseph's brothers is ugly hate, no goodness, evil lies. Ugly hate, how much hate would you have to sell your brother to foreigners? Just no goodness. What good could come from that? And the evil lies, again, to go back and tell your father, here's your son's robe. And they live with that lie for 22 years. Seeing their father mourn, not just for a few months and go back to normal living, but to see in their father's eyes over and over again, him mourning for Joseph for 22 years. But what we see is somehow for God's grace for Joseph, there's God's beauty, God's goodness, God's truth for all the bad and the more bad that's going to come his way. But it all ends up, as we looked at last week and we look at this week, when he speaks in Genesis chapter 50, something has happened in his heart, his mind, his soul, his body, flowing with God's beauty, God's goodness, God's truth, and he speaks these words to his brothers who are still lying again. As for you, you meant evil against me. God meant it for good, to bring about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. You, my brothers, you're alive. Your children are alive. Your spouses are alive. Your grandchildren are alive. Through what God has done, the beauty, the goodness, the truth of who this God is. So do not fear. I will provide for you and your little ones. Thus he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. And so we see after all Joseph endures, he moves and speaks God's beauty, God's goodness, God's truth. You meant it for evil. God meant it for good, for the saving of many. Again, as we close, a few questions. How do Joseph's 10 older brothers move and speak? And after all these years, 22 years, and as we looked at, another 17 years before their father dies, there's something that still is not quite right in them. But yet these are the very men that God is doing his work through. All the people of Israel that are going to come from these 12 men. And we know that Jesus will come from these 12 men. So the question for us again today is, how will we move and speak? If we know these stories, if we know God's summer dream for us, God's summer dream for souls that matter, how will we move and speak? Will we move and speak with God's beauty, goodness, and truth like Joseph? And even if people come against you and they hate you, or they just mildly dislike you, how will we move and speak? When we know that they mean bad things against us, how will we move and speak? Joseph knew, but he speaks God's beauty, God's goodness, and God's truth. And we're here today because of this story and 1,000 other stories. But the dream goes really, really bad for a while. But God's beauty, goodness, and truth always wins out in the end. So our last question, how will we follow Jesus? How will we follow Jesus? It's always going to be the burning question for us. The burning question for the disciples way back when, follow me. And we know as they were following Jesus, there were times, oh man, there were times, this is way too hard. They saw the ugly, they saw the no good, they saw the evil, not in Jesus, but in the world around them. But they followed because they could see the dream in the eyes of Jesus. They could see where the dream was going to end with beauty, goodness, and truth. Do you see the dream? How to follow God's summer dream. It's not a me dream. It's better than that. It's bigger than that. It's eternal. The wonder of following Jesus.